Hi, I'm Troy, and welcome back to another on-the-road video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com. Today what we're working on is a Frigidaire front-load washing machine. Upon arrival, we had noticed that we have an E11 error code. An E11 error code is going to tell us that we have a long fill time. After looking at the error code and going through the machine, we find that we need to replace the control board. On top of the E error code, we also have a spin speed button not working on certain cycles, mainly on normal and heavy. Stop. Before beginning any repair, always be sure to disconnect the power to the appliance. It is also recommended to test the outlet for proper voltage. The tools needed to complete this repair are going to either be a tack puller or flat blade screwdriver and a Phillips head screwdriver or square bit driver. So what we're going to do now is remove the control board and replace it from there. So what we're going to do is start off by removing the screws in the back. Once we have the screws removed, you'll take the top, slide it back, and then lift up and set aside till we put it back on. With your top removed, we're going to have to remove 2 screws behind the user interface panel. The 2 screws that are screwed into the plastic, not the 2 screws that are into the metal bracket. You're going to remove those 2 screws. Once you remove those 2 screws, remove your dispenser, pull it out. There's a push button. You push down on the push tab, remove the dispenser. You will see 3 additional screws on the front you're going to want to remove. Now with those 3 screws removed, you can tell there are 3 tabs along the top back. The tabs connect the control panel to the metal bracket. So start at one end or the other and release the tabs. Once the tabs are released, it's going to come forward for you. You're going to disconnect the 1 plug that goes to the control board. With the control panel removed, we're now going to remove the actual control panel. To remove the control panel, the screws you're going to remove, you can either use a Phillips head screwdriver or a square bit to remove them. With the screws removed, set them aside. The control panel will pull right off of the user interface. You're going to set your user interface aside. Now your control panel, the old one, still has parts on it that we need to remove to put on the new control panel. Start with the clear plastic pieces that basically bring the light from the control panel through the front of your display on your user interface. Now that we have them removed, we can take and remove the dial. This is what you're twisting as you're adjusting your cycles. If you pull at it, it's not going to come off just in any position. Just twist it as you're getting through the clicks, and you'll find one that it just slides right out. Once you've found the one that slides right out, you can take and essentially just push this one back in. It is keyed. It's got its own little tab, so it goes in one specific way. Once it's in there, you can now put it in and twist it, and it will not pull right out. Now you have that there. You're going to set that aside, which is your new control board. You're going to take your old one, and you still have your display panel that we have to remove. I use either a tack puller or a flathead screwdriver to get under one little edge of it and pull it out and up. That will come off. Inside is going to be your number display. You'll slide that off. Take the new one. It does have little notches on each side, so it only goes in one way as you're putting it back in. Set that back in place. With that in place, the cover also has a notch in it that goes on a little notch there as well. Position over, snap into place. Make sure both tabs, one on each side, secures into position. Once that's in place, you can now reattach the control board to your user interface. Just take your user interface. You're going to take your control board. You're going to set it back into position. And as you can probably see, it's not going back in all the way because the control knob is flat on one side. So you have to twist until you find where it sits at. Once it sets back in place, the control board will be in the proper position. Once you have that back on there, take your 5 screws to secure the control board back to the user interface. With the screws back in place, the user interface and the control is now ready to be reinstalled. Now we're going to take and reconnect the one plug that goes to the control board. Once we have that reattached, you're going to reposition the user interface back to where it goes. It doesn't always want to go in bottom first, so what you may need to do is tilt it up. Get the top back over, the bottom will set back in position, and now re-secure the top back on to the unit. Once that's back in position, now we're going to be able to go ahead and put our 5 screws back on and replace the top to the unit. So the 5 screws you had originally taken out of the user interface, you have 2 separate sizes. You have 2 short and 3 longer. The 2 short screws go in the top, and then the 3 longer screws go in the front where your dispenser is located. Now your top screws, as you're putting them back in, I'm going to use my drill with my torque turned all the way down and be very careful. You may want to use a handheld bit or a handheld screwdriver to do this, because as you're putting them in, you can tighten it down and snap the plastic tab off. So just be very cautious of that as you're putting it back on. Once you have the 2 top back in, we can now put the 3 back in along the front of the unit. With the 3 screws back in the front of the unit, we can now take our dispenser, slide it back into position. Dispenser's back in position. We're now going to go ahead and reattach the top panel. The top panel, you're going to set it back on the unit. A little bit back off the front. It should set down flush. Once it does, slide it forward, make sure it's under the lip on the front, and reattach your 2 screws along the back of the unit. So now what we're gonna do, we have power, we're gonna check the different cycles to make sure that all the functions now work. And they do. We're going to check it on multiple settings to make sure that they are working properly. Now, as you're doing this, you'll notice that on, for instance, delicates, you only get medium, low, no spin, but on normal, you can go through max, high, medium, no low spin, bulky. You get access to all the spin speeds, and that will complete the repair. Thank you for watching another quality repair video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com.